Good afternoon, this is Jeff of Sewer Tech Northwest. We are at 3303 Southeast 159th Avenue here in Portland. Located at the front of the house. There's the front door. We're to the right of the front door. The cleanout sits absolutely perfectly in front of the last foundation bent before you run into the garage. If you walk to that wall right there, you'd be in the garage. So it's basically right where the house meets up with the garage wall. Anyhow, got a 3-inch ABS cleanout. We're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. I'm doing this one from the exterior here, so I'll introduce water down the cleanout here in just a moment. We're going to get down line a little ways, and then we'll put about 5 gallons of water down the pipe. A little bit of standing water to start. This is actually the best way to look at standing water with it all drained out. This is just the natural look at how much water is truly there. Thus far, that's not even exceeding 1/4 of an inch, between a 1/16 and 1/4. Very minor. That is light years and galaxies away from repair worthy there. And I fully expect to see some level of standing water here. This house sits below grade, sits down below the street level. I've been doing this 13 years. I've cameraed almost 25,000 homes. Anytime a house sits down below street level, even if that main lateral is 30 feet deep and you have got 10 times as much depth as you need to grade the sewer line, for whatever reason, this configuration almost always results in some kind of standing water. I don't know why, but it is often the case. Alright, this I'm not loving here. What we likely have here is the dive into a transition joint. Ooh, I am not liking how that feels. My camera is bumping. I'm going to run some water here down the line and see what happens there. What worries me a little bit, it could just be bellying. This is a very common setup. When a line dives down hard like that, what often happens is right at the base of that drop, the line levels off, and then it will typically transition over to, if this is a fully updated line, it will transition over to some type of PVC. It's a very, very common location to get settling. When you get really bad settling, though, it can result in a pretty nasty offset joint. And what I don't want to do is run the risk of running my camera through a joint that's offset so far, it barely allows the camera to go through and gets caught coming back out the other side. Anyways, put about 5 gallons of water down the pipe there. Trying to get this cleared out a little bit so I can get a nicer view of things. I think my camera just saw daylight there. And if all it is just some settling, we'll talk about that here in just a sec. Yep, there's your transition joint. So they nosedive the line. It's, it's what you've got. It's a lazy way to install a sewer line. Ideally, you put a more gentle gradation on the line. You don't do nosedives. You could have eliminated, not that the standing water prior to this point is significant, but you could have eliminated all of that very easily had that grade been utilized and not just nose dived away. So anyway, we just swapped over to 3034 PVC there. From the appearances, it looks like 6-inch. I don't get a great view of the transition because of the standing water, but that looks large enough to easily be 6-inch PVC. And that's what you typically have here, especially this era. If this was a 90s mandate house, it's always 3 to 4 and then 6-inch pipe, or 4-inch right out of the gate, and then to 6. Anyway, it's an extremely clean sewer line. Other than some debris there at that standing water area, the remainder of the line before and after it is, just about spotless clean, which is an important factor in gauging how standing water is affecting things. In fact, the manhole here on its own is probably causing more flow problems than the standing water is. Manholes are essentially designed to gather debris. The way they're put together, if debris goes down line, especially improper stuff, it tends to build up in the manhole. it's an easy location for people to get down into the line and clear them out. So there's kind of a design behind that. I'm going to put just another 5 gallons down the water just to help blow some of that debris through there I just cleared out. But manhole convergencies like this, you often will have 2, 3, 4, 5 homes all tying into one manhole. And you can get cross traffic sometimes, but it's especially a situation where you want to avoid anything improper going down the line. That includes flushable wipes. I do not consider those proper items. They have no business going down a toilet. If you put stuff like that down line, stuff that does not disintegrate easily and readily, they tend to really build up in manholes. And you can end up, you know, in worst case scenario, I've seen one neighbor cause an entire cul-de-sac to back up every single house. So you can see how that debris is kind of building up there. What it looks like is very large amounts of toilet paper are going down the line all at once, balled up toilet paper, and so you'll sometimes get this. The good thing is it's a very long distance from the house. The head pressure of water building up behind that is pushing stuff through with little issue at all. I'm just kind of, you know, making you aware of that from mostly an educational standpoint. Anyway, we're going to go locate really quick here. We're going to put some more water down line, then we'll take another look at everything. So that right there is actually pretty good water velocity. That's ripping past the camera pretty nicely. It's one of the reasons I wanted to do that, to see how the water flow looked. It's one thing if it looks like a sink drain is running. It's another thing when it looks like a toilet flush just blasted through the pipe. So it looks like you got pretty good water velocity shooting through that bellied area. And we're going to revisit that here in just a second and talk more about that once we come back. But you can see how most everything that's shooting past the camera right now are these massive wads of toilet paper. It's something, I mean, when you have kids in the house, sometimes it's hard to avoid that, but you see how that's stopping up right there? That's even with 5 gallons of water moving behind it. The belly does not stop water flow. Water runs into water and it moves. It's hydraulics. So you're not getting a lot of hindrance here as far as flow goes, but everything that's breaking loose are these huge wads of toilet paper. I'm not trying to beat anybody up, but that right there is just a good example as to why you don't want to do that. They don't travel well through the sewer line. And that balled up toilet paper is responsible for more blockages than anything you can do to your line. Alright, located the camera head. The line terminates right into the manhole, right in the middle of the cul-de-sac. You'll see the manhole out there. The line ties into that. And when I look through the manhole and see where the tie-in comes in, it lines up pretty nicely with the front left corner of the driveway. So the line looks like as it makes its way out, it jaunts under that left side edge, or gets very close to it, but it looks like it does go into the driveway. Straightens out from there and shoots off to the manhole. Anyway, this is, I mean, by and large, I mean, we've got some balled up toilet paper in the line, but the pipe walls in this line are immaculate. This is a household that is doing a fantastic job of not putting cooking oil and grease down the line. I haven't seen a speck of it. It's a very uncommon thing to see. And and going back to the balled up toilet paper thing, it's one of the reasons you want to really keep up on that habit, especially when you have little ones in the house that are still learning how to fold toilet paper. Not having grease build up in your line makes your line significantly happier when it comes to abusive items going down line. It's much less likely to result in a blockage and a backup. That grease buildup, in fact, that little bit of tan stuff you see in the flow line, there's hardly anything there. That is the world's most minor example of some grease buildup. It acts like glue. When you get a thick layer of it, a lot of these balled up toilet paper blockages that happen, often, a lot of them occur without people even realizing it. The line blocks up. When your line is relatively clean, or quite clean, those blockages often get broken loose after just a few feet of pipe fill up behind it with water. The head pressure combined with the disintegration aspect of toilet paper is enough to break things loose, and you have no idea it even happened. When your pipe walls have thick grease buildup, that same blockage that might otherwise break loose after 5 feet of pipe fill up behind it can now withstand 20, 30, 40 feet. And it's more likely that, you know, some innocuous little toilet paper blockage will result in a full-on sewer event. So it's a very good maintenance item to keep up on. It's a great example of how to treat your line right here. Aside from some of the bald toilet paper. You have little ones in the house, it's kind of hard to avoid. Anyway, what's floating around the water here by and large is just fine particulate. There was some toilet paper, but again, most of it was big, huge chunks of it. It was not folded. So stuff is indeed, I mean, it stops up here, but it's clearly conveying through. In fact, the only buildup I can even talk about is that little bit right there, just before the standing water begins. And, you know, if this were a flatter part of the sewer line, I could tell you very easily that was where a temporary blockage occurred. It's very common to see that. You'll see a little bit of debris randomly in a line. That's where a blockage occurred in the past. And unless you see that buildup persist all the way back to the house, it tells you the blockage happened under circumstances that whether it was related to structural issues or not, but then it broke loose almost immediately. That's why you have no buildup prior to this point. But when you have these hard vertical drops like this, when water shoots through the pipe at a really high rate of speed, the water does not just remain in the flow line. As you can see how my camera wants to go, it actually runs into the top of the pipe. The same thing occurs to debris going down the line. It lifts off the bottom of the pipe and hits the top of the sewer line. So that debris right there may be the result of a little bit of water kind of backing up slightly here. But overall, stuff appears to be getting pushed through just fine. I am going to run the camera backwards here in just a moment. Thus far, though, right now, this is not a scenario where I'm going to recommend a repair on this. Although we do have a belly here. It runs from around 23 to 28 feet. The line is submerged here. But there's just almost nothing to talk about in the way of buildup in the line. And if I can't even recommend $5 in drain cleaning on a sewer line, I certainly don't recommend you start tearing driveways out. Stuff like that, by and large, hugely comes down to how the homeowner is treating the sewer line. And then you've got these other minor bellies here. I'll at least notate these on the report. These are hardly even worth talking about. They're so small. This one runs from about 9 feet. And again, no buildup. This one dissipates off here at about 15 feet. And let the water settle into place here. The worst point that thing is getting is about 1/2 inch of water. Now, where I typically start to recommend, or at least consider it, is once there's a 5-foot section of pipe with at least 1 inch of water. So that belly out there from 23 to 28 feet does meet that requirement on my end. That's something I designed, 10, 12 years ago. It's about the spot where I start to see toilet paper hang up, regular old toilet paper. So where you have your little bit higher likelihood for stuff to occur. But I only do that when it's very close proximity to the home. And generally speaking, bellies like that are I only recommend fixing when they are very old, rough pipe materials. Alright, I just pushed the camera back through the foundation wall here, and this was the reason I always do this, is some households are aware, some households know they abuse the line, they put stuff down that shouldn't go down it, and they know they have a belly, and they get some pretty good buildup in it. And so preemptively, before the sale of a house, they'll run a hydrojetter through the sewer line and clean it up to minimize the appearance of things. The reason I go backwards like this, in my experience, I've cameraed more lines than almost anyone in this country has. Almost nobody will run a jetter backwards through a house. Even when I recommend doing it, it almost never happens. And so when you get a line that's had issues or had previous backups, while you can make the outside look all clean and spiffy, the interior of the home is usually what tells the story, and you can see how spotless clean this is. So this is not showing any signs whatsoever of even, I mean, that little bit of debris out there just prior to the belly that dropped before the transition, I can hardly call that buildup. This line is cleaner than half the brand new construction homes I look at. So based on all of that, I couldn't even recommend you clean the line. The belly, in my opinion, is not significant enough to require repairs when you combine the aspect of the hard vertical dive prior to it, which creates a lot of speed and a lot of gravity working in your favor. It's also 23 to 28 feet out from the home. It's not right out of the gate. And if you were to theoretically ever get a blockage there, you have a lot of gravity and head pressure working in your favor to push things through. And I would only suspect that that occasion would ever arise under an abusive scenario based upon what I see here. This has had lots of balled up toilet paper going down it. I don't see any evidence that that has even led to a blockage. So it's going to be scenarios where you're dumping a lot of cooking oil and grease down the pipe, and or in conjunction with abusive stuff like balled up wipes, flushable wipes, paper towels, things like that. All the pipe there appears to be intact, albeit it has settled. I don't see any broken pipe or anything of the sort, nor any evidence that the joints are open to the ground based on how clean the water was going through there. There was a little particulate floating around, a couple bits of toilet paper, but nothing obvious like dirt, brown water, stuff like that would show you that it's got any joints or anything opened up to the ground. So we have adequate flow all the way to the main lateral connection. All the ABS and PVC pipe here all appears to be intact, extremely clean. The sewer line is functioning at this time. That's my 2 cents on that. Not that that belly couldn't theoretically contribute to a blockage. My experience with a lot of these bellies in plastic sewer lines, which is a very different animal from a belly in cast iron or concrete. If that were concrete or cast iron out there, I would be singing a very different tune about it. That's a much different story where you have very rough pipe walls that snag debris as it comes and slows down through those areas. Plastic pipe resists that very nicely because of how smooth it is. All the other little bellies there prior to it, there's like 2 of them, were hovering in the 32nd of an inch to about a ½ inch of standing water at their worst point. Those are way too small to require repairs, in my opinion.